All right, we are live. Today I'm doing this one a little bit earlier than I usually do, so I'm going to play around with times. Whoever hops on, y'all can hop on, ask your questions, and then whoever, if y'all by any chance aren't able to make it to this one, totally cool. Leave your questions in the comments. I'll try to get back to them there. Um, But yeah, pretty much what this is going to be for those of you who haven't been keeping up so far. This is video number 3 of where I'm talking about all of the cognitive functions and the different facets of the cognitive functions. So essentially, what I mean by that is that the example that I've been giving, and so far I've done introverted feeling and extroverted feeling. So today we're doing extroverted thinking. And the kind of metaphor that I've been using is that every single function is pretty much an emerald. And when I say it's an emerald, what I mean by that is that every function has different facets to it. And so that means that some people will have certain aspects of a function. And sorry for all the noise over here. It's wasn't expected. But yeah, a lot of functions will have different facets to it, pretty much in the sense that it'll, some people might relate to certain aspects of a function, whereas other people might relate to different aspects of a function while still sharing the same function. And I believe that development comes in when you are tapping into all the different facets of the function. And the function itself is not just a facet, but it's the whole emerald. It's the thing that has the facets all together. And so the best thing to do for somebody who's trying to develop these functions is to understand what all of the facets of this emerald is, and then try to capitalize on that and increase your ability and skill in all of those things. Goodness, it was not even that loud before. Hope it's not that loud for you. If it is, let me know. I'll see what I can do. Um, is he like closer? Yeah, just y'all let me know if it's like actually too loud or if I'm just hyping it. I'll see if I can like move further down. But anyway, to continue, like I said, today we are going to be talking about extroverted thinking. It is the flip side coin of introverted feeling. So this function is always going to come with introverted feeling in the stack. And we are going to be talking about all of the different facets of extroverted thinking. I will mention that, of course, I do not have extroverted thinking in my immediate stack. I'm an ENFJ. However, I do know a lot of people with extroverted thinking. I've spoken to a lot of people with extroverted thinking. I've coached them. I've read a lot about it. So I have both the in real life experience as well as the head knowledge, if you will. And this is going to be me sharing a lot of the things that I've pretty much gathered from there, to kind of bring some more light to what extroverted thinking is and the different facets of extroverted thinking. Because I feel like a lot of people, especially this function, they make it very two dimensional. And I don't want to say, like, I think that a lot of people also, when they see something being two dimensional, they want to be like, it's not that. And it's like, well, no, don't say that either, because that's the other extreme. It still is that, stereotypes come from somewhere, but say that it's not just that. There's more to it. So a lot of the stereotypes that we might have around TE, extroverted thinking, is pretty much the idea that, like, okay, like, well, I guess we'll get into that. But essentially, like a lot of these stereotypes, there's more to it. Like, it's not that they're not true, but it's just that there's more. Oh, yeah, he's definitely getting closer. But I think he's almost done. So, okay, anyway, we will get started. Hey, oh no, I haven't answered any questions yet. I'm just going to throw, the usual facts and everything, or things that I've experienced first, and then we'll get into all the Q&A. So you're not too late for that. All right. So essentially, how I've defined extroverted thinking is it's concerned with getting desired results. It's people with this function as a strength often logically strategize the best optimal way to efficiently accomplish a set task, rarely considering the emotions of others or even their own emotions and values to an extent. This function also works with information given in the external and objective world and finds ways to deliver it in a concise manner. This function is most associated with going after one's desire ruthlessly, due to it always being paired with FI. And then people with this function as a strength can often appear bossy or unethical, if unhealthy, of course. Now they're right by the window. This is funny. Okay, maybe I should stick to doing these at night, right? I don't know. Or I just probably pick the worst time of the day to do this. It's whatever. We're gonna continue, unless if y'all say something. So, essentially, I'm going to go through the different facets of TE. That's the nickname for, or the shorthand for extroverted thinking. The nickname for extroverted thinking is actually efficiency or effectiveness. And that's because TE is always gauging, like, okay, what is the proper way to go about things? Or not even necessarily proper, but the most effective way to be able to accomplish a task. The most effective way to get from point A to point B, even all the way down to point Z. It's going by step by step. So one of the biggest things that I'm going to start off with is that a major facet of extroverted thinking is resource management. I think that a lot of people underestimate this facet of extroverted thinking. Like extroverted thinking users, like so ESTJ, ENTJ, ISTJ, and INTJs, they're usually, there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, they are usually really good with money. They're really good at being able to save the money. They're really good at being able to generate the money. They're really good at being able to spend the money on in a way that's very smart, because they want to have resources. They do not want to be inhibited or held back with their lack of resources. So they like having an abundance of resource, and that's why they probably make the most money out of like all of the types. I think that actually when we look at the polls, it's ESTJ making the most, and then ENTJ making the second to most. And sometimes, depending on certain cases, then you can see them like switch. But yeah, that TE is just like all about like, pursuing and getting that that goal accomplished, of being able to achieve, being able to like accomplish whatever they put their mind to, whatever their heart desires, and being able to have the resources to be able to get there. Another facet of extroverted thinking is streamlining. So streamlining, if you don't know what that is, I actually saw a really, I like this podcast. I like this definition that I saw earlier. It's streamlining is when you're simplifying it to make it more efficient or profitable. So essentially, by that, what I mean is that, or what they might mean, what I'm understanding from it, is that when you streamline something, you are essentially trying to find the best way, the most effective way for it to be able for something to be able to be done, for something to be able to be distributed, for something to be more lucrative, even if it means like people being able to digest things. Like, okay, how can we, like TI, for example, which we're going to get into next week, is all about like breaking the things down as small as possible, and then giving you all the different components and stuff like that. I guess it can kind of also be like brought into like how I'm giving you all these different facets, for example. Whereas like TE is more of like, let's make this simple and let's make this packageable so that we can just deliver it, and it's not going to be too complicated. It's not going to also be false. It's just getting down to like what exactly is necessary to package and give. So it's kind of like, when you even think of like fast food places, like they're doing, it might not be like the most efficiently healthy, thing there, but it's getting the stuff done. It doesn't mean that it's going to be like, something that's going to kill you either. But TE, that's what it's focused on. Like if you're thinking of like, for example, so if like a high FI Dom, like right now, if we're going with the restaurant example, I'm thinking of like uh, SpongeBob. I'm not saying he's FI Dom. I'm just saying this is like a caricature of an FI in such a situation where SpongeBob might take the time to make every single Krabby Patty like really presentable, putting like a smiley face on each of them, and kind of like just taking his time with it to make each one very personable. Now, obviously, that's very kind, but if you have like hundreds of people coming into your restaurant every single day, you don't have the time to be able to make each Krabby Patty something that, is going to be individualized and all of that. So that's where FI could fall short. And then TE comes into play where it's like, no, we are going to produce as many Krabby Patties as we possibly can. And unfortunately, what will have to like go down with that is that they're not going to be as individualized. In fact, we're probably gonna have machines that'll just make everything like very impersonal. But hey, as long as people are getting what they came here to buy, cool, and it's still in a way good service. Like for example, I think that although Chick-fil-A is known for like being very kind and all of that, which could be associated with FE, and I think to an extent it is associated with FE, they have really good TE as well, so like they know like, hey, like this is how we're going to do our lines, this is how we're going to do all of that. Like they have a great system in place on being able to simplify everything. TE is having the numbers on a menu that's like 1, 2, 3, so that way you don't have to go into the all the quote unquote TI of it. Like, yeah, can I have the burger that's with the pickles, but then it also has this, and like, no, can I have the number 2? Boom, that's it. So TE streamlining things makes things like very simple, and it gets things just rolling in a quick way. It's like we're not really looking for the details right now. We're just looking for what's going to work and what's true, what's false, get it out the way. These are the people that, they look at the resume and they're trained to look at the resume really quickly. Like, hey, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Put it aside or add it to the people that we're going to be using. They're the people who can make like really quick calls because they're able to understand like, okay, this is what has to get done. This is why it has to get done. Let's just go do it, So I think of also like Harold Cooper from The Blacklist. I feel like it's really interesting how, if for those of you who watch the show, the task force are always bringing him like the details of certain situations, which he will then take all the details and like, this is what's going on, this is what's going on, boom, boom. So Ram, for example, I believe that he's an ISFJ. So he's always bringing like the SITI of like the situation, which is very necessary, and then as soon as Harold gets all of that as an ESTJ, then he's like, all right, cool. This is what we're doing with that information. This is what's important. This is what's not. Let's move it. And I feel like that's why like TE users, they can make very effective leaders because they're not just looking at all of the little nooks and crannies and details of things, but they're actually trying to, streamline. They're trying to get things movable and into action. And TE is also about punctuality. So I think that's another facet. Like I saw a tweet recently that said, what is more TE than everybody agreeing on what time is? Like time is an abstract thing, but TE users have come up with this thing like, okay, let's go by this idea of how the sun moves and everything. Let's all be on the same page with this so that now when we want to get things done, this is a certain time that we're going to get things done. Like TE, in a way, from my understanding, created time. It has this whole idea of like, this is an efficient way for us to be able to understand when something should happen, how something should happen in a way. So TE users tend to be very punctual. Once again, you will definitely have outliers who are not, but generally speaking, more than any other type, they have the biggest sense of time because they don't want to waste your time, and they definitely don't want to waste their own time. Especially the higher the TE is, then they're just really productive in that way. So that's again why they're trying to streamline things. Like they want to make things as efficient and as effective as possible. So clearly, even from just like this fourth facet, you can see just how much TE should be appreciated in the type community and everywhere, honestly, because it's creating so much good for us. So that's a big thing there. Another facet of TE is its organization of people. So extroverted thinking is really good at being able to, for example, talent scout and knowing like, okay, this is these people are good at this, so we're going to have them use this, and then these people are good at that, so we're going to have them use that. Like they know how to delegate. Especially like a TE user is not the type of person to be like, oh yeah, I'm good at that, even when they're not really good at it. They're pretty honest usually with what they're good at and what they're not good at. And what they're not good at, then they know who is good at it usually and who to give that task to. And so that, once again, usually makes for a very great leader. But they still excel in competency in executing goals and tasks, which is another facet of TE. So they are probably the most competent people that you will ever meet. And unfortunately, sometimes they are very good at also making you feel incompetent because they can't comprehend and understand how something so easily understood by them is not as easily understood by other people. But yeah, like they're very competent, and once again, like how to get from point A to point B, how to like what the most cost efficient way to be able to get something done. I mentioned one time like how like it's a TE thing in my opinion. Like I know an ISTJ who pretty much doesn't buy any books. She just looks up everything online, and she'll like search for the PDFs and stuff like that, and she'll just find it, and she's saving her money. So once again, it's going back to that whole resource management thing. Like, hey, I want to be able to use my money on things only that I have to be able to use my money on. And so therefore, if I just have to like look a little bit harder to find something that I can just get for free, then why not do that instead of using my money that I've worked hard to get to just kind of like spend on that way. So they're very competent, and if you give them a goal or a task, either for them to complete or for them to help you to complete, they're on point with that. They're really good at being able to help you to be able to accomplish those things. Another facet of TE, which I mentioned in the definition, is that they are able to pretty much put their personal feelings aside and group feelings even aside to do what needs to be done. So in a way, what I mean by that is like, this is where a lot of times you might get the stereotype of how TE users a lot of times can be very like rude and biting. And it's because a lot of times they're not checking in with their feelings. If they're higher stacked TE, then their FI is tertiary or inferior. So they're not really looking or spending as much time getting in tune with how do I feel and how do other people feel and what are my core values and my stuff like that. No, they're really just thinking about like what needs to get done. And it doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how everybody else feels. If this is what we need to get done, then we have to get that done. And that's often means they have to make the tough call. Dang, yeah, it sucks that Gerald is sick, but he's been sick for the past 2 weeks, and we need to replace him with somebody else, and that's just the way it goes. It doesn't mean that boss does not care about Gerald, and he's not. Well, it could mean that he's probably not thinking about Gerald and how he needs to, grow in this way. It's not that he, or pretty much finding another job or something like that, but he's focused on, okay, no, we have to find a way to continue to move forward, and this might include the execution, not literally, but like the execution or firing of Gerald from this job. And we hope that he does better, but at the end of the day, Gerald is going to do Gerald is going to hold the rest of the team back, and we have a quota to meet. We have to do these things. I don't have time to be able to sit down and think about how Gerald feels or how other people might feel about Gerald, because this is what needs to get done. And so sometimes TE users can come off as jerks, but it's not really their intention most of the time. There are TE users that are jerks, especially even those who know about type, and then they use it as an excuse to be a jerk. But I know a lot of really kind TE users, and that's just not always the case for them. So that's a big thing for them. Like, their competency and being able to execute those goals might also include them having to put their personal and group feelings aside to do whatever needs to be done. They're also really good at being able to assess information deductively. So they are the types to be like, okay, well, if this is that, then that means that this must also be that. And so therefore this is that, if that makes sense. So it goes right back to the competency thing. Like, they're really good at being able to look at information and just grasp it very quickly. And that's why, for example, going back to Harold Cooper, who is the task force manager in the blacklist, like, people can give him all this information, and then he's just like taking it, and he's like, okay, what's useful, what's not useful, discard. Okay, this is what's going to be happening here. And they can kind of like get to the bottom of things pretty quickly. So that's another big skill of TE users that I feel like this one is actually often like slept on. Another facet of TE is their amelioration of systems and structures. So not only do they create systems and structures a lot of times, but they are also the ones to be able to continue to create it. So TE DOMs especially, they're unlike FE, where it's like, okay, FE is like the person who has to continuously come and water the garden and check on the health of the plant and all of that. TE doesn't really want to sit and monitor. TE wants to set, what's the term? Set and forget. And so they will create the system, and then they pretty much leave. If they might make like an irrigation process so that, plants are all getting watered, but they're not going to be checking on each and every plant to be able to check on its health and how that's working, and stuff like that. Instead, they're just trying to find ways on how can I make my life. That's pretty much what TE is. How can I make my life as easy as possible? And that's why you'll actually see a lot of TE users say that they perceive themselves to be lazy, especially TE auxiliary types, because they're looking for the ways to be able to make their lives as easy as possible. So we from the outside might look at them, it's like, you are definitely not lazy. But they see like how much more work other people might do to get what they need to get done. And they're just always looking for the most, once again, like efficient and effective shortcut way to get whatever they needed to get done, so they can just like relax and not have to do as much work. So that amelioration of systems and structures is a really big thing for TE. Like, they're always paying deep attention to, okay, what is like, okay, I've created this system. What, like, just like how FE is always looking at what is the weak points of a relationship, what are the weak points of, and like, how can we improve the relationship? TE is always looking at, what is the weak point of this system? Like, oh, well, I noticed that Chick-fil-A, what would be better is if they maybe had like some trash cans outside, so that way it can keep this. And then maybe if they had the line, like maybe 2 different lines, that way they could have somebody coming out like that. And then maybe if they did this, so they're thinking always of like ways to improve the system. And of course, if you have an NTJ versus an STJ, that might be a little bit different. The STJ is going to focus more on what has been reliable and verifiable in the past. So it's like, okay, this is a system that's always worked. If it's not broken, then why fix it? What is there to necessarily like improve? Unless if they have, more tapped into their extroverted intuition of all the ways they can continue to amplify and better the system with a whole bunch of different ideas, so that even if it's not broken, they're still improving it. Whereas like an NTJ is going to be thinking ahead, like, okay, how long and sustainable is this system going to be? And what can we do to make sure that it's going to be able to reach as far as possible? And I might not even have to come back and improve this system, but even as they create the system, they're always thinking like, how can we make it better? Once again, just like an NFJ who's often going to be looking at like, okay, yes, the relationship is great, but how can I make it even better? So that's what an NTJ is always going to be trying to do. Whereas like an STJ is like, okay, these are the things that has always made this system work well. And so therefore I'm going to stick to these things. I'm going to try not to gauge, I'm going to try not to go too far from that because that's risky. So, oh, wow, I think I'm getting through these like pretty quickly. Once again, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them. You can leave like a Q in front of them just so I can like get to them like quickly and everything. Uh, but yeah, we're actually on the last two facets. So the penultimate facet of TE is a focus on achievements. And I feel like this is pretty much well known that TE users are, once again, because they're very task oriented, then they have a focus on being able to check things off of their list. Like these are the stereotypical people who have like checklists and they're trying to like get it off. Even for TE inferior types, ISFPs and INFPs, they enjoy being able to check things off of their list. Of course, this is just a general judger trait as well, but especially amplified when you have TE users there. Like they just get a really good, almost like dopamine hit from being able to achieve their tasks and accomplish their tasks. So yeah, that's another facet of TE, focusing on achievements. And then lastly, another facet of TE is real world application. So unlike TI, for example, where TI is like all about the theories and, like this could be this and this trivia fact here and yada, yada, yada. TE, once again, is that Harold Cooper type of figure. Like, all right, what are we doing with this information? How are we going to make this actionable? How are we going to utilize it in the most effective way to be able to get results? That's what TE wants. It wants results. And so that's why it's so focused on achievements. That's why it's so focused on competency and everything like that. Like it's trying to see like, okay, what's true, what's not, how can we like, it's about conserving that time. And it's about being able to make sure that whatever it does is not a waste of time. And so how are we going to utilize this in the real world? So TE is really good at being able to take information and knowing which information is not necessary, and focusing on the information that is necessary to be able to get from point A to point G, Q, Z, whatever point that might be. And so, yeah, that, ladies and gentlemen, is TE, the facets of TE from what I've noticed, in a nutshell. Now I will check through these comments. So, possible. All right. Hey, your favorite memory. I'm just going to call you YFM because I don't know your real name and maybe calling you your favorite memory. I mean, maybe you are my favorite memory. I don't know. My SI sucks, so I don't really remember what my memories are. I'm kidding. That's such a stereotype. But all right, anyway. Sorry, I only now joined. Is it possible to develop TE if it's inferior, or will it forever be a blind spot? People seem to have different opinions about that. Great question. I know a lot of IFP types. I'm married to one, as you might know. She's an ISFP. I would say that her TE is pretty good. I think that everybody's inferior function can become really well developed, but it just mean like, what do you mean by developed? Like, that's the biggest question. You know what I mean? Like a TE inferior, in my opinion, is not ever going to be as natural and as good and as skilled as a TE dominant type. And maybe not even, and not a TE auxiliary type either. Probably as good as a TE tertiary type. I think that's like the best bet. But even then, like it's like usually the lower in the stack that it is, and the more good you'll become in one of these facets, maybe 2 to 3 of these facets. But unlocking the whole emerald is what's going to be more difficult for you. So in the lower stack TE user, they might become really good at, for example, like the FI is going to be really good at knowing exactly what the passion is and what they might want. But usually lower stack TE users are like, man, but I don't have the resources, and I don't know the actionable steps on how to get there. I think that especially once they tap into that auxiliary extroverted sensing or that auxiliary extroverted intuition, then they start naturally finding ways to be able to tap into their TE as well and being able to see like, okay, these are the steps that I should probably take to be able to accomplish this task. These are the steps I should probably take to be able to achieve this uh, level of what's it called? Ah, like pretty much like getting this desire that I want met. So I think that when they start to figure out like how to attain resources, even if they don't know how to use the resources, they might find resources as in people who can help them with being able to use those resources. So that's essentially like what the TE, like inferior types, might become good at TE with, because that's still good TE. Like knowing someone who can help you with what you're not good at. That's just like how the TE Dom will delegate. Like, I don't know how to do this, but I know someone who does know how to do this. So yeah, in a nutshell, it is definitely possible for a lower stacked TE user to develop their TE function. And it's not, and I definitely don't believe that it's going to be a blind spot. I feel like our inferior function is actually rarely a blind spot. I think that if anything, it's a pretty active part of us. And it's just that, with more development and more intentionality and maturity, growth, whatever, that's when we start to become more and more um, acclimated on how to use it. So, yeah, the most cost effective of the bunch. Yeah, TE users definitely are. Like, bro, try playing freaking like a game like Mancala. That's why they're known as like the best at chess, because they're like, they're just anticipating like how to conquer you, like how to make a move to get what they want and to elevate themselves higher. Like these are the stereotypical people who might be climbing the ladder just because they know how to do it. They just know how to do it. An example of a really bad TE user, I know there's a lot of them, but you'll be able to see how relentless they can be. Is Light Yagami from Death Note, the anime Death Note. I believe that he's an ENTJ. I know that a lot of people think that he's INTJ. I firmly disagree with that. I believe that he's an ENTJ, and he was adamant on being able to, accomplish the goal that he had. And then you can see the FI inferior in him. Like, he's still like morality and, values, morals, all that. He wasn't blind to it. If anything, that was a lot of his drive. But he had like kind of like a very almost two-dimensional view of it. So that's why I wouldn't say that it's something that like he's blind to. But yeah, TE DOMs, like when they put their mind to something, there's no stopping them, but you can see the same thing with IFPs as well. Like once they finally are tapped in to what they really want, then and they have the resource there, then they're driving almost just as strongly. But yeah, all that being said, another example actually is the movie on Netflix, I Care a Lot. The main character on there, I believe that she's an ENTJ, and then the adversary is an INTJ, and it's interesting seeing that kind of dynamic over there too. But yeah, all that to say that yeah, they're definitely the most cost effective. It's such a mystery to me how people can just do things without just thinking about it. Yeah, it's funny like how they just know, and I wouldn't say they don't think about it, but I guess it's kind of like second nature to them. It's just like how like as an FI dom, like you might just know how you feel, like you just know that, oh, this is my motivation, this is my whatever. You might not have to process that as quickly because you've done things so much, so now it's just second nature to you. But then lowering your stack, like like that's where it becomes like more difficult. So yeah. Yes, I often feel like little naive child around them. Look, you are not alone. I'm telling you. And they're not often, again, there are many exceptions, but they're not often the best with tonality. So they can sound like impatient. And maybe they are impatient because, once again, they're not understanding, like, how can somebody not get this, but I do, like so easily. Like it's so simple. I've explained it to you like 3 times, and so it seems like they're always like frustrated. It's like, all right, I'm gonna just do this myself. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to upset you. It's just I'm really dealing with some cognitive strain here because this is not as easy to me as it seems to be for you. And I guess that's something that just doesn't make sense to them as much. Yep, time is a structure based on a widely agreed truth, useful for setting common expectations of when things should be done. Yep, exactly. And TE is all about that. That's pretty much, I feel like that's another facet that I should add on to that thing. Like it's based on widely agreed truth. So like, okay, no, it's just, we all just kind of like agree that microphones are used to amplify your voice, like that's just what it is. And so we don't have to think about the nooks and crannies of that and all of that. We just know this, and that's an agreed upon truth that we are now going to utilize in however way that we need to, which then often makes them a brutal realist, just as Katie's saying here. And that's why a lot of even like NTJs, they might not really relate like to the whole like super abstract intuitive kind of stuff because they see themselves as very realistic and practical, which TE really is, but in actuality, they're still thinking in an abstract way because to be able to think into the future and to be able to project into the future in that way and looking at symbolism and stuff like that and looking at what's going on right now to be able to understand like what's going to happen in the future, that's pretty abstract. So and NTJs, they like to go like they often don't like to go by what was already pre-established. They want to find a different way to like cut their way like through the woods. So I think that's another like interesting thing about them in that sense. I remember you mentioned in another video that the tertiary function is actually quite present in one's consciousness. I'm referring to you saying that they aren't in touch with their FI. Tertiary function is actually quite present in one's consciousness. Yeah. If I'm understanding this correctly, yeah, like I agree. I think that the tertiary function is, we often believe that we're way much better at it than we actually are. And so for me, for example, as an SE tertiary, I might think that I'm better at improvising than I actually might be. Or I might think that I'm better at being present than I actually might be. I'm really good at being engaged, but if I try to be present, then unless if I'm interacting with you, my mind is not going to be here. It's going to float into the future. It's going to float thinking about a whole bunch of different things. So I can't just sit there with you in silence. I mean, I literally can, but I'm not going to be with you. And like how like an SE Dom or SE auxiliary might be able to. So when it comes to like, the tertiary function, I do believe that like we're good at it. Like I'm really athletic. I'm really able to still be engaged. I'm still able to hop into action. I can improvise to an extent for sure. But at the end of the day, so it is conscious, but it's just not like as skilled as we think that it is. Interesting. I started to behave like that, finding the easiest way and being efficient when I'm working last minute and under hype. Yep. That's TE inferior. Yeah, exactly. STJs prioritize sustainable systems. Yes. STJs prioritize, like if you ever want a system that you're almost certain is going to work, you refer to the STJs because they're not gonna try new things with you in that sense because they want results. And I think that's why ESTJs, generally speaking, make more than ENTJs do because they are taking less risks. they are sticking to what's safe and what's secure. So STJs, they will prioritize sustainable systems because they want it to be secure and they want it to be risk averse. Whereas like NTJs, they want their system to also be sustainable for sure, because that's just the nature of TE, but they're going about it from a different way. Like they are, oh, sorry, talking a lot. They are essentially like looking for a way to future pace and project, like, okay, what are the future problems that this system could run into, and then how could we actually like avert those problems. Whereas like STJs are like, okay, just what has always worked in general, and how can we then stick to this. Listening to this makes TE users sound quite cool, actually, but in real life, I always find them so intimidating. Because that's both true. Like, if a TE user is frustrated with you, that is very intimidating. I feel like they're the scariest of all of the types. But they are also really cool because it's really cool to be able to grasp information so competently and dole it out in that way, and knowing like how to accomplish a task. And I mean, once again, you're making money pretty efficiently. And so, come on now. Which one facet of TE do you think is most useful for non-TE DOMs and OXs? Something TE anyone can apply to their own life, no matter the type. Great question. Well, I mean, obviously, I can definitely go with punctuality. Like, I think that it's really good that we learn how to be punctual, coming from the judger. But I think I was gonna say learning how to make the tough call, but even then, I feel like there's just certain things that some people just shouldn't do. Like if you watch like Attack on Titan, like NTJ Irvin, there's reasons why, like, certain people are capable of this person is dying and we just need to end their misery, because that does something to certain people. And I mean, it has an effect on everyone, but I feel like it affects certain people, like higher stack TE users, generally speaking, less. So they're capable of doing what they have to do. And if another type were to do that, it could really like mess them up in a way that's not as healthy. So, dang, what would the facet be aside from punctuality? Mm, I think learning actionable steps and what can be useful for real life application. I think that's something that everybody, regardless of whatever your type is, and if you have T in your stack, that's something that could really be heavily used. Like knowing, like, okay, even though I might not have TE, what's the most efficient way for me to pack up all of my boxes if I'm moving next week? And how should I, like, where should I start? Should I do the room first, or should I start packing the kitchen first? Stuff like that. And then kind of like being able to schedule things so that you can check it off, like checklists. Learn how to accomplish tasks. It doesn't matter what functions you have. If you're able to learn how to accomplish tasks and motivate yourself to be able to like check things off in that way, that's going to be really healthy. That's going to be really good. So I think that might just be my answer. Yes, I noticed in retrospect what a stereotype MX name is. What a stereotype, sorry, hold on. What a stereotype M, oh, my name is, oh, is the X next to the Y? Oh, it's not. I'm just going to still assume that that's what you meant. Well, yes. I think the inferior function is untapped potential. I agree. I think that the inferior function is definitely untapped potential. And once you find out the power of your inferior function, then you like to obsess over it in that way. And so I think that is like a very big aspect that I'd encourage all of my clients to find out like how to use, because the inferior function is something that, like for me as an ENFJ, my inferior function being introverted thinking, I would never say that I'm absolutely terrible at it. I found it to be an untapped potential, and that's actually helping me a lot with my extroverted feeling dominant process. So it's helping me to be able to establish rapport and harmony, by diving deep into the mechanics and thoughts that I usually have, that can then I can then share with people like you guys to be able to create like more harmony in the world and have us all on the same page with certain things. So yeah, I think that's a big thing. Hey, I just got here excited to see what you think. Hey, welcome to the show. It's probably ending soon, but oh dang, I gotta go. Oh well, you gotta go. Yeah, no, it's yeah. This even though it's live streaming right now, all of these are going to be available post stream. So be sure to just check them out, including the previous ones. They're still out there too. So if you want to check it out, then yeah. I wonder what would make them. I wonder what would make them take an FI user seriously. I think when it comes to FI users, I think that TE users are often most, well, first of all, they're very protective of FI users a lot of times. But I also think that when they see like how strongly you hold to your morals and how driven you are, then they often want to help you, because a lot of times like they see that you have what they might not. Like you have the nuanced views of human emotion and morality and all this other stuff, and they just mainly have like the ability to accomplish the goals and make actionable steps and tasks, to be able to accomplish in that way. So they can actually find you as like as a talent that they've scouted, so they can like help you to accomplish whatever it is that you're putting your mind to. That's how I see it. I don't want to generalize though. Maybe there are TE users who are actually secret. Yeah, there's a lot. Like, trust me. I think that TE really does get a bad rep online, and I understand where it comes from because I have seen a lot of really scary and horrible TE users. But I know a lot of really kind ESTJs and ENTJs in real life as well. So I think that everything comes down to who you are as an individual, and that's something that we should most pay attention to. But yeah, for sure, there's a lot of TE users who actually really appreciate FI. Trust me on that. The FI user can TE explain their rationale or prove them wrong, overcome their fear of speaking their. Yeah, I fully agree with that. Fully agree with that. That was great. Saying something also have to find it. Cool. Keep this company in the hair. I'm still in my early journey. All right. Cool. Well, I think that that's probably all the questions today. Like I said, I did the video a lot earlier, and it's a weekday, so I know that there's a lot of people who are at work, and they probably are going to come on later and wish they might have like been here. Once again, I invite you to leave the comments, or whatever questions that you might have, and eventually after I'm done with all 8 functions, then I'm going to probably go into the polarities. So like now we're going to be talking about the FETI polarity. Like, I'm going to explain that, and we're going to have a little bit more of these Q&As in that way. So yeah, but I'm going to keep on playing with these times. I guess I'll start trying to shoot for like a later time, just so that more people could be able to engage. But thank all of y'all for tuning in today. I really appreciate it, per usual. If you liked this video, make sure to like this video and share with people who you feel like might benefit from it, especially for those who may not have the best idea of what TE might be. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Love and appreciate y'all.